Let's bring in now Marcus Papadopoulos. He's the editor of Politics First, a website, an alternative news website too. Marcus, interesting to get your thoughts on this. What's your reaction, firstly, to this report?
Well, I'm shocked and appalled by this report, which is both dangerous and inflammatory and should be categorically condemned by any person who supports freedom of speech and by any person who opposes the incitement of hatred. In essence, what this report says is that any British person who is in the public eye and who gives interviews to Russian media outlets, for example, RT, is an idiot and also is a traitor to Britain and should be publicly named and shamed. Now, quite frankly, that is absolutely disgraceful. That is absolutely intolerable. That report is tantamount to being a witch hunt, and it is 21st century McCarthyism in practice. And I am very alarmed by the contents of this document, and I sincerely hope that the Henry Jackson Society will seriously reflect on what the contents of this document is saying for its own sake.
How do you think it will be received in the European Parliament when it is debated next week?
Well, undoubtedly, I suspect that most parliamentarians in the European Parliament will be sympathetic to some extent to the contents. But what I would like to say to members of the European Parliament, and indeed anyone who is reading the contents of this dreadful report, to bear in mind this: British people, British commentators who give interviews to Russian media are not idiots. They are not traitors. They merely happen to disagree with a policy of the British government regarding, for example, Syria or regarding Ukraine. And what this report by the Henry Jackson Society is actually doing is it is encouraging hatred of people such as myself and other British people who go on RT. Now, that can lead to tragic events. That can lead to people like myself and others being physically harmed by British nationalists, by religious extremists, and by people who are of an unsound mind. We only have to go back to this summer to see what happened to the Labour MP, Jo Cox, when she was brutally killed in cold blood by a deranged individual. And I'm saying this candidly, and I will say this openly, that if something is to happen to a British commentator who appears in Russian media, a politician, a journalist, or an academic, etc., then the Henry Jackson Society would be partially responsible, because they are whipping up hatred towards people who oppose the British government's line when it comes to a foreign policy area, and they are endangering those people. And the other two messages I have to say is this: that perhaps the Henry Jackson Society would like to consider the British government as a traitor, given that the British government is endangering the welfare, the security of British citizens by supporting terrorists in Syria. And perhaps the Henry Jackson Society might like to consider itself as an idiot by failing to highlight the double standards and folly of British foreign policy when it comes to Syria and Libya, for example.
OK, look, Marcus, we have to leave it there. It will be very interesting to see what sort of reaction this debate gets when it finally comes to the fore, I think, later this week. But for now, we'll leave it. That's Marcus Papadopoulos, that's editor of Politics First. Thank you.